podcast. I'm Robin Lewis, founder and CEO of the Robin Report, which, by the way, I have to say this, is much more than just a daily report. We really do have a knowledge platform here from which we communicate thought leadership on various strategic topics through the daily reports, yes, but also these podcasts. And we also do webinars and live, hopefully live events in the future. And along with our chief strategist, Shelley Kohan, who is also, by the way, a professor at FIT and Syracuse University, we welcome you to our conversation today on the topic of made to order or built to order. So Shelley, why don't you kick this off?
Sure. So there's really kind of several factors at play here, which are really pushing retailers and brands to rethink inventory position and inventory holdings. So we'll kind of focus our conversation on the fashion industries, but over the past decade, there's been environmental impacts, population shifts, and a consumer that absolutely wants to be more involved. So we're going to tackle all three of those, but let's start with the environmental impacts. Global warming, sustainable practices, and of course, the recent pandemic have really forced our industry to look at supply chain, really from a speed to market, efficiency, and cost perspective.
Right.
We have these infrastructures that were actually not really built to serve a digital planet.
You nailed it. You know, Shelley, we've talked about the supply chain issue ad nauseum, and if it is not the major issue across all industries, then it's at least equal to whatever the number one might be. And the awakening to this was the realization of what caused its collapse. First, as you said, environmental, with, of course, COVID up front and central as the unknown that the entire world did not know how to respond to, and which, on its own, has changed the world in ways that require the creation of a new normal. It really wiped out most of what we used to call normal. And your points on population and demographic shifts, consumer behavior changes, et cetera. But the other point you made is perhaps the most important. Our infrastructures were not built to serve a digital planet, as you so well mentioned. And this, along with the unexpected events that were out of our control, has created a devastating mess. Mm-hmm. And to bring the dilemma closer to home, the result of all this gets to the point that we have inventory issues we have never experienced. And when we have an all-powerful consumer weaponized with technology, you know, the smartphone, internet, so forth, they can demand personal satisfaction immediately. So not only does the supply chain need to be fundamentally transformed, obviously embedded with technology, that will also provide more customized and personalized products and experiences aligned with what consumers are demanding today. So the CEO of Tractor Supply, Hal Lawton, summed up the inventory issue in a different way, but one that I totally agree with. He said, I think the first factor is a long-term factor, which is just given the geopolitical tensions that are out there, that folks are diversifying out of China.
Yep.
And that's been happening really since the tariffs went into place. And to some degree, a little bit before that. So I think on the short-term side, we've seen both in the GDP data, but also retailer announcements over the last few months that we've got inventory building in the United States. So he said the pileup with seasonal and discretionary goods is now becoming an issue for other retailers. Well, in my opinion, Shelley, I think Hal was a little understating. Major retailers like Walmart, Target, Macy's, and many others are hiring third-party liquidators to get rid of the excess. Talk about inventory. And of course, TJX, Burlington, other off-pricers are having a heyday.
They sure are right now. So just to expand upon a couple of your points, there's been advances in technology, both from a design and production perspective, that is actually has allowed this near real-time production, wider use of JIT, just-in-time inventory, with raw materials being closer to production and manufacturing places and products being made closer to the time of when the consumer demand is. So the whole goal here is to have the minimum amount of inventory on hand to meet demand.
Correct.
So just-in-time inventory ensures that there's the right amount of inventory produced, only what you need, when you need it, and of course, where you need it. So, you know, if you look at the fashion industry in particular, the two major pain points are the time it takes to design products. It's a long time. It's usually a year from the time you start designing a product, which means that there is less chance of getting demand right. So that then leads to more markdowns, or the reverse of that is if you get it right, but you didn't buy enough, you can't satisfy an unmet demand. So, and of course, the second major pain point for fashion goods is, of course, the return rates that we have also talked in nauseam about over the past year. So if you can shorten the design time by using AI technologies for design capabilities and getting the fit more accurate, companies can minimize both these issues. And we have some examples that we're going to go through in a few minutes.
Yeah, Shelley, you know, well, the smart retailers and brands are beginning to figure it out by using technology, particularly AI, that they can replace their antiquated, and I mean really antiquated, process of forecasting, or in fact, as we have said before, it's actually guessing with a little bit of data you may have. Anyway, it is a process of guessing what products and what the quantities are that are going to be needed and when, where, and how to flow goods through the antiquated supply chain so that old supply chain needs to be replaced with a consumer demand-driven supply chain. And as you say, today, individual consumers can drive that demand. So the right inventory will be in the right place and the right time, down to the SKU for that one consumer.
Yep. And the whole supply chain issue, that's just one of the issues we're going to talk about. We're dealing with the infrastructure in the US that was not built to serve the growing digital economy, the throughput and stress that has been seen over the past 2 years in terms of logistics, overcrowded ports, massive units of last mile deliveries, really has finally caught up with us. The next major factor is a demographic shift. It is real. So the population shift in the US markets, according to the recent census survey, the white population decreased 8.6% since 2010. That's when the last census took place. And it's the first time in the nation's history where the white population decreased.
Not surprising.
Hispanic, Latino population grew 23%, Black population grew 5.6%, American Indian, Alaska Native population grew 27%, Asian grew by 36%, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islanders grew 28%. The multiracial population, so these are people that actually identify with more than one race, has changed considerably since 2010. In 2010, it was measured at 9 million people in 2010, and now it's almost 34 million.
Wow.
In 2020. So that's a 276% increase.
Amazing.
But let me just add one thing to that statistic. Part of that increase might be due to how the surveys were administered in 2010 versus 2020. In 2020, it was more detailed, it asked more questions. But the whole point here, Robin, is that we have a large, growing, multicultural demographic. And this impacts consumers' tastes, sizes, and preferences. For example, including a wider range of sizes to accommodate this larger demographic.
Yeah, and this whole point, Shelley, it really confirms the fact that this country was made by immigrants. And, so this immigration problem has got to be solved in Washington. I'm not getting political here, but the point is, we've got to be more inclusive in an open country, which, with the numbers you just mentioned, it does look like we are becoming, it's a melting pot again, perhaps. So anyway, one pitfall for retailers, Shelley, is trying to be all things to all demographics.
Right.
It just does not work. This is what landed the well-intentioned Old Navy strategic initiative called body quality, one word, for inclusive sizing. It failed in its implementation big time, which we talked about in our recent podcast is lack of leadership dragging down the gap, meaning
That's
the corporation gap. Yep. Anyway, yeah.
Well, it also impacts, the demographic change also really impacts customer preferences when shopping. So companies like Sephora and Ulta Beauty, the beauty industry has done, I think, a good job of this. They've really worked hard to present assortments of products that meet with that wider demographic of consumer. And they're specifically making bold efforts to target the BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color consumers.
Right. So, and Old Navy's their intention was bold and correct in theory, but they blew it in implementation. Given Sephora and Ulta's great success, I think they will be successful in this endeavor as well.
Yeah, I mean, the demographic shift is really real, and companies are really trying to work through the impact on specifically merchandise assortments. So the last factor that we're going to talk about, of course, is this hyper powerful consumer who wants a say in how things are made, where things are being made. And they actually expect companies to deliver a more personalized experience. So Gartner Group indicates that giving customers a personalized shopping experience resulted in a 49% increase in lifetime value of a customer.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah, so giving your customers an opportunity to actively participate in the creation of their products, companies will increase emotional connection to the product itself and the brand behind it. And of course, it translates to greater satisfaction and, as we just saw, higher lifetime value of the customer as well.
Yeah, well, it certainly worked out well for Target, for example, with its all-in motion athleisure wear line. The company had customers actually help with the design of the products, which turned out to be a huge success, to the tune of $1 billion in the first year it was launched.
That's right.
So, so environmental factors, changing demographics and customer feedback are all leading to what, Shelley?
So what I'm seeing, Robin, is more and more companies, given these kind of three major factors, companies are looking to what's called mass customization, and personalization in terms of product creation. So the reason it will be easier to execute now than say 10 years ago is that the use of technologies, and there's a wide variety of now third-party companies that can execute a mass customization strategy. That whole process has evolved greatly. And just for our listeners, mass customization is, marketing and manufacturing technique that combines the flexibility of personalization of custom-made products with the low unit cost associated with mass production. That's how we get mass customization. You may have also heard it being referred to as made to order or built to order.
Right, you're right, Shelley. And And I think Nike is probably the poster child of pivoting from a largely wholesale brand over 10 years ago to a largely direct-to-consumer model today. And this with the use of technologies that use predictive and demand sensing analytics.
Right.
Right. And they have been at the forefront, really, of what has become defined as inventory optimization as they began their pivot to direct-to-consumer sales. Nike, the huge athletic wear and footwear giant, acquired predictive analytics and demand sensing from a company called Select, spelled C-E-L-E-C-T. And they bought Select in August 2019, really to help improve its in-house localized demand predictions, essentially to better serve consumers on a very personalized basis. Nike leverages this centralized data to create real-time dashboards, okay, and predictive models. And then they synchronize, data Wi-Fi access points or application databases to gain real-time inventory visibility, which is one of the great strengths, total transparency, total visibility of inventory, where it is, where it's going, and so forth. So using AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning capabilities, Nike said it has since been able to deliver products faster and more accurately, all while bolstering its omni-channel fulfillment services, such as buy online, pick up in store, and ship to store also. A no rush shipping option for consumers, prioritizing sustainability, and direct order drop service.
Yeah, Nike's a great example of that. Another
Yeah.
one is Carhartt. Robin, Carhartt is the workwear brand. They sell at Tractor Supply. You mentioned how Lawton earlier,
Yep.
but they sell at other companies too. But it's really doubling down on its direct-to-consumer business model as well. And they recently started piloting customization for its workwear apparel. And get this, guess who they get their feedback from? Their customers. Their customers are the ones giving them feedback to help build out the customization model. So Senior Vice President and General Manager of Global Products of Carhartt, Alex Guerrero, said that the way we create product is through feedback from our core customers called the Carhartt crew. And customization was a need that developed from the insights of real workers. So Carhartt's demographic has changed, and it includes a more diverse customer base, including size.
Yeah, well, there you go, Shelley. Carhartt, although it's a private company, they had over $1 billion in sales as of 2019. It's still owned by the family, but great. They are finding a way to get customer feedback and dabble in mass customization. So how are they doing?
Well, Carhartt would not be able to scale mass customization with its current business model. So they partnered with a company called DXM, and that company has the ability to keep costs low through its proven successful process using just-in-time inventory manufacturing at scale. So DXM actually works with over 20 organizations, allowing for shorter lead times on product manufacturing and less inventory and carrying costs. This is weighing on the minds of CEOs right now, this inventory carrying.
Right.
So, and the end product has to, of course, deliver high value at a reasonable price within a very short delivery time, and they do it in fewer than 7 days.
Oh.
So when customers go to Carhartt to go to the website, it gives them the power to design products based on work function or application of how the clothes will be used. For example, an oil rigger worker can increase canvas weight and add military grade Cordura reinforcements to make them stronger. Or let's say you have a left-handed carpenter, they could move the hammer loop to the left side of a pant, right, for added convenience. So there's a 3D model on the website, and customers can kind of view the changes as they quote unquote build their product. The key here is customization of product delivered in fewer than 7 days.
Yeah, it's great. And Shelley, a recent Deloitte study found that consumers will pay an average of 15 to 40% more for products that, are personalized for them, even when the actual cost of the personalization is negligible. For example, embroidering their initials on the product or moving, as you mentioned, a hammer loop to the other side of work pant. So the direct-to-consumer model, as we know, Shelley, is far more profitable as well. Carhartt is mostly a wholesale company, so if they can implement the mass customization successfully, this will certainly be more profitable for them, direct-to-consumer, less inventory holdings, obviously fewer markdowns, and higher loyalty with their target customers. I don't know, it sounds like a win-win-win.
Yeah, I definitely, built to order or mass customization, whatever you want to call it, it avoids the stockouts as well and helps continue to be able to sell very hot items, which wouldn't have been able to fulfill following the traditional forecasting model. Here's another example of this whole inventory carrying issue that is on the weight of the minds of CEOs, although slightly different than Carhartt's approach. Hanes brand, Hanes brand that owns Hanes and Champion. In 2022, based on everything they went through throughout the pandemic, they actually reduced its overall SKU count by 30% from the prior year.
Wow.
30%.
Amazing.
Yeah. So their approach was really to edit the assortment, but get this, they're using customer analytics to help make those decisions. So again, they're getting the analytics from the customers to then decide how to edit. The company lowered its costs. They improved its stock in stocks significantly, which drove higher margin SKUs. And of course, Robin, they plan to grow their direct-to-consumer business.
Yeah, correct. Pete Nordstrom also said at the NRF conference earlier this year that they are looking at reducing SKU assortments to help with the inventory throughput in the supply chain and making sure they have the right stock in stores to meet consumer demand.
That's right.
Rob, and Rob Wallstrom, by the way, CEO of Vera Bradley, had also mentioned in an earnings call earlier this year that they too are looking at editing SKU assortments. All of this, Shelley, of course, is about inventory optimization along with personalization, right?
Yep. And well, guess what, Robin? Hot off the press, Vera Bradley has moved its manufacturing back to the United States.
Wow.
They've done this through a unique made-to-order process powered by a third-party company called JTB. Sorry about that. A company called JTB. So what they're doing is they're collaborating with this company that can place one-of-a-kind designs on the website without producing any inventory, all while the customers then are able to pick what they want and then get that product delivered in a 2-week turnaround. So you go from zero inventory to meeting customer demand within 2 weeks. And so since implementing these strategies, Vera Bradley has seen a growth in their business. Their approach is to, I think what's happening is really fostering a sustainable supply chain, bringing manufacturing jobs to the US. Sarah Holbrook, one of our writers, had a great article earlier this month. Is the time right? Remember it? Is the time right for North American supply chain, she said. So Sarah said, the forces weighing on a failing system are encouraging change. We need to look beyond the failing formulas to solve our current and future manufacturing dilemmas. And my favorite line in the article is, perhaps the solution is closer to home than we think. So, and she's right. Near source in the US would certainly help in times that are as uncertain as the ones that we are going through today.
Yeah, that was a great article. You know, Shelley, based on current inflation concerns, a looming recession, and possible major shift in consumer demand, the on-demand inventory model might be the only answer to make it through the next year. You know, the level of uncertainty in terms of what to forecast is absolutely too great. And there, again, we said this before, there's really no historical model that would be accurate, you know, for retailers and brands. They just cannot carry excess inventories. You know, in Coresight's survey last year, June of 2021, they surveyed 170 retail executives. 80% of them said their company lost sales of at least 3%. Yeah, due to allocation issues and inadequate stock replenishments.
Wow, that's tremendous. I'm going to give you one more example, Robin. It's kind of another one of my favorite examples. But there's a company called Fashienza, which is an AI-driven platform that provides 100% visibility and transparency in the supply chain from sourcing to production to distribution. But here's the interesting part about that company. This is the mass customization component of it. The company can custom design products end to end in 21 days.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
You kidding?
So think uber fast fashion that can be designed and distributed in a 3-week process.
But is that scalable?
Yes, that's what they do. They just received, you ready for this, Robin? $100 million in Series B funding. No wonder, right? The timing.
Well, yes. Yeah. Investors are going to throw money in anything. Okay, look, technology is passing me by, but if they're able to do that, that's incredible. But the question is, how much can they scale that business? In other words, if you doesn't it get so big that you can't be as customized and in 21 days? Anyway, look.
Well, they do. They have a big roster. So they work with over 250 manufacturers, and they currently serve over 200 brands across 6 countries, including the United States, Canada. But companies that are using them, or companies that use Fashions as suppliers, are Ralph Lauren, Scotch and Soda, Hugo Boss, Inditex, Lululemon, Amazon, H&M, Walmart, Macy's, Nordstrom's. So they make this fashion supply chain, but they make it simple. You know, it's a very simple, short process.
You know, throughout this conversation, the use of third parties keeps surfacing. And I think that's part of the new world, part of the new normal. I think companies are going to find third parties who can provide, instead of building out themselves, the company building it themselves, they will use third parties to do things that they cannot do. And these are examples of that. This Fashienza. So I don't know, Shelley, for the fun of it, let's take a giant leap into the future beyond customization and inventory optimization, way into the future, okay? I really think that one day you will be able to see an outfit online or in a catalog or on a runway, or you are watching on the internet, and you will be able to tap onto the image and it will be produced to your exact size, color, preference, etc., and delivered to your home the next day.
I agree.
However, I don't know when that future will be. I only know, you know, that tech geniuses will figure it out. I think that's really true. But today, of course, we can only deal with the tech we have, right?
Right.
Inventory optimization, customization to the degree possible, and speed to market, as you point out, just in time possible, and a totally satisfying experience is what we must create, because the consumer demands it because guess what? They can, right?
That's right, because they can. I like mass customization, made to order. I think it serves the needs of the customer. I love the fact it reduces waste and it's more sustainable. It's a more personalized experience. And for retailers, it's a better chance of getting it right, getting the right product, right time, right place, the right price. So,
Yep.
for our listeners, you can find more of our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Buzzsprout, and therobinreport.com. And look for us on YouTube, where we broadcast our podcast as well. And please follow us on social media, link in with us, and follow us on Twitter for the latest thoughts about the industry.
And I want to thank all of you once again for joining us. I think it was a great learning experience, I hope. And as I mention every Friday, if any of you have a topic that you've been thinking about that you would like Shelley and I to cover in one of these podcasts, please email me at robin@therobinreport.com. Thanks again.